My parents and my sister invited me out for drinks on my birthday. Everything seemed fine until they suddenly left the table, saying they'd be right back. As I sat alone, a stranger approached, grabbed my hand and whispered, "Don't believe them. Don't sign anything." Before I could respond, she disappeared into the crowd. My heart was racing. I looked around the bar, but she was gone. My family had been acting weird all week, but I assumed they were planning some surprise party. When they returned 15 minutes later, they had this energy about them. Too cheerful, too rehearsed. My mom kept touching her necklace, which she only did when nervous. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. My sister kept checking her phone under the table. "Everything okay?" I asked carefully. "Perfect," Mom said too quickly. "We have something exciting to tell you." My stomach dropped. Dad pulled out an envelope. Inside was a contract. "Your grandmother's trust," he explained. "You turned 25 today, which means you can access it, but there's paperwork." I stared at the document. My grandmother had died when I was 10. I vaguely remembered her mentioning a trust, but my parents had always been secretive about family finances. "How much is it?" "Just sign here," my sister urged, pointing to a highlighted line. "We can discuss details after." The stranger's words echoed in my head. "Don't sign anything." I flipped through the pages. Legalese filled every line, but one phrase caught my eye. "Transfer of beneficiary rights upon signature." My hands started shaking. "This says I'm transferring the rights, not accessing them." Silence. Mom laughed nervously. "That's just legal terminology. Trust us." "Then why won't you tell me how much it is?" Dad's jaw tightened. $700,000. But there are conditions. Taxes, management fees. It's complicated. My sister grabbed my arm. "Just sign it. We've already talked to the lawyer. This is the only way." I pulled back. "If it's my money, why do you all seem more excited than I am?" That's when I noticed the stack of brochures on my mom's lap. Retirement homes, luxury ones. My dad's new car keys on the table. My sister's engagement ring under her napkin. Way too expensive for her teacher's salary. "You were going to use my inheritance," I said slowly. "That's why you need me to sign." My mom's face crumpled. "It's not like that. We're family. What's yours is ours. Your grandmother would have wanted what? For you to trick me on my birthday?" Dad stood up abruptly. "You've always been selfish. After everything we've done for you." I grabbed my phone and the contract. "I'm taking this to a real lawyer." My sister blocked my path. "You don't understand how much we need this money. Dad's in debt. Mom's medical bills. I can't afford my wedding. We were counting on you. You were counting on me not reading the fine print." That's when I saw her, the stranger from before, sitting at the bar. She was watching us with this knowing expression. When our eyes met, she tilted her head toward the exit. I shoved past my family and walked over to her. "Who are you?" She smiled sadly. "Someone who signed the same document 15 years ago. I'm your Aunt Vivian, your grandmother's daughter. They told you I died in an accident." My blood went cold. "Your parents erased me from the family when I figured out what they were doing," she continued. "That trust? It was meant to have multiple beneficiaries, but they've been forging documents, stealing from it for years. If you sign that paper, you'll be the one taking legal responsibility for their fraud." I looked back at my family. They were huddled together, whispering. My dad was on his phone. My mom was crying. My sister wouldn't look at me. "There's more," Vivian said. "Your grandmother didn't die of natural causes, and I have proof." She slid a manila envelope across the bar. "Don't open it here. Don't go home tonight. And whatever you do." Suddenly, 2 men in suits appeared behind her. One grabbed her arm. "Time to go," he said firmly, flashing some kind of badge too quickly for me to read. "Wait." I reached for her, but they were already moving toward the exit. She looked back one last time. "Check the signature on page 7. It's not yours." Then she was gone. I looked down at the envelope in my hands. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "They're watching. Trust no one in your family. Meet me at the address inside the envelope. Come alone. Bring the contract." I stood there frozen for maybe 30 seconds. The bar suddenly felt too small, too hot. I could feel my family's eyes on my back. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the envelope. "Page 7, she said. "Page 7. I flipped through the contract with trembling fingers. There it was. A signature line at the bottom of page 7, already signed, in handwriting that looked like mine but wasn't quite right. The letter A was wrong, too rounded. I always made mine with a sharp point. They'd forged my signature, which meant they'd already filed something, already started whatever process this document described. My stomach turned. If they'd forged my signature once, what else had they done? I looked up. My family was standing now, moving toward me. Dad's face was red. Mom looked panicked. My sister had her phone out, probably texting someone. I didn't wait to find out who. I grabbed my coat and ran. The cold November air hit me like a slap. I fumbled with the envelope, ripping it open as I walked. Fast, then faster. Then I was running down the street, my heels clicking against the pavement. Inside was a single piece of paper with an address, 2847 Riverside Drive, apartment 4B, and a key. Behind me I heard shouting, Dad's voice. "Stop! Come back here!" I turned the corner and kept going. 3 blocks. 4. My lungs burned. When I finally stopped, I was in front of a 24-hour diner. I ducked inside and found a booth in the back, my whole body shaking. The waitress came over. "You okay, honey?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. Ordered coffee I didn't want. She looked at me with concern but didn't push. I pulled out my phone. 17 missed calls, 6 voicemails, dozens of texts. "Mom, please come back, we can explain." "Dad, you're making a huge mistake." My sister, "I can't believe you're doing this to us." Then one from my mom that made me go cold. "We know where you live. Come home and we'll forget this happened." I turned off my phone. The coffee arrived. I wrapped my hands around the cup, trying to stop shaking. The contract sat on the table in front of me like a bomb. I read through it again. slowly this time, really reading it. Transfer of beneficiary rights, assumption of fiduciary responsibility, authorization to liquidate assets, legal liability for past distributions. It was all there, hidden in boring legal language. If I'd signed this, I would have been responsible for whatever they'd already taken, whatever fraud they'd committed. They weren't trying to steal my inheritance. They were trying to make me the fall guy for stealing it themselves. $700,000. How much of it was even left? I thought about my grandmother. She'd been sharp until the day she died, or at least that's what I'd been told. Heart attack in her sleep. Peaceful. But Vivian said it wasn't natural causes. What else had they lied about? I stayed in that diner for 2 hours, read the contract 4 more times, made a list of questions on a napkin, drank bad coffee until my hands stopped shaking. Finally, around midnight, I called a cab and gave the driver the address from the envelope. Riverside Drive was in a different part of the city. Nicer buildings, tree-lined streets. The cab dropped me off in front of a brick apartment complex with a green awning. Quiet, dark. I used the key. It worked. Inside, the lobby was clean but dated. Worn carpet, fluorescent lights, a bulletin board with notices about trash pickup and snow removal. 4th floor, no elevator. I climbed the stairs, my footsteps echoing. The hallway smelled like cooking and old carpet. Apartment 4B was at the end. I knocked quietly, waited, knocked again. Nothing. I tried the key. It opened the second lock. The apartment was dark. I felt along the wall for a light switch and found one. The lights came on. I gasped. Every wall was covered in papers, documents, photos, news clippings, sticky notes with handwritten dates and names, red string connecting different pieces like something from a crime show. It looked completely insane, but as I stepped closer, I realized it was organized, methodical, years of research. On the left wall was my grandmother's family tree. On the right, financial documents. Straight ahead, what looked like medical records. In the center of it all was a photo of my grandmother, younger than I'd ever seen her, maybe 40, standing between 2 girls who looked about 10 and 12. The older one I recognized from other family photos, my mom. The younger one I'd never seen before, Vivienne. I moved closer to the wall of financial documents, bank statements, transaction records, everything labeled and dated. Someone had been tracking money moving out of the trust for 15 years. Small amounts at first. A few thousand here and there, then bigger. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. My phone buzzed, still off, but the battery was dying, making it vibrate. I turned it back on long enough to see the screen. 23 missed calls now, and 1 new text from the unknown number. Stay there. Don't leave. I'll explain everything tomorrow. Lock the door. Don't let anyone in. I locked the door, put the chain on. Then I stood in the middle of that apartment and tried to process what I was looking at. On the medical records wall, I found my grandmother's death certificate. Cause of death, acute cardiac arrest. Signed by Dr. Raymond Chen. Date, April 3rd, 15 years ago. Next to it was a different document, an autopsy report. Same date, different doctor. Cause of death, poisoning consistent with digitalis overdose. Manner of death, undetermined pending investigation. My hands went numb. There were more documents, police reports, witness statements, all dated within weeks of her death, then nothing. The investigation had just stopped. I found a handwritten note stuck to one of the police reports. Vivian's writing, I guessed. They paid someone off. Couldn't prove it. But I know. I sat down on the floor. My mind was racing. My grandmother, poisoned. The investigation buried. The trust stolen. Vivian erased from the family. And now they wanted to pin it all on me. How long had they been planning this? Since I turned 18? 21? Had they been waiting for me to reach 25, the age when I could legally access the trust? I pulled out the contract again, found the signature page. My forged signature wasn't the only one. There were 3 others. My parents, my sister, all dated today. They'd signed too, which meant if this went through, we'd all be responsible. But I'd be the primary beneficiary, the one who inherited the trust, the one who would take the biggest fall. Smart. In a horrible, calculating way. I spent the rest of the night reading through Vivian's research. She documented everything. Every withdrawal, every forged document, every lie. She had copies of the original trust document, before it was amended, before my mom's name was added as a trustee, before clauses were changed. The original trust split everything between my grandmother's 2 daughters, 50-50. But after my grandmother died, the documents were changed. Vivian's name removed. My mom named sole trustee until I turned 25. Then I would inherit the remainder, except there probably wasn't any remainder. Around 4 in the morning, exhaustion hit me. I found a couch in the living room and collapsed onto it. Set an alarm on my dying phone for 7. Closed my eyes. I dreamed about my grandmother, teaching me to bake cookies in her kitchen, letting me lick the spoon, telling me stories about when she was young. She'd been a teacher, tough but fair. She'd saved money her whole life, invested carefully, built something to leave behind for her family, and they'd killed her for it. I woke up to knocking on the door, loud, insistent. My heart jumped into my throat. I froze on the couch. The knocking came again. It's me. Open up. Vivian's voice. I stumbled to the door, still half asleep, and checked the peephole. It was her, alone. I opened the door. She slipped inside quickly and locked it behind her. Did anyone follow you? I don't think so. I was careful. She looked me over. I probably looked terrible. Yesterday's clothes wrinkled, hair a mess, eyes red from lack of sleep. You read it all? She asked. I nodded. You've been investigating them for 15 years, longer. I started before Mom died. She told me something was wrong, that she was scared, but I didn't believe her. Thought she was just getting paranoid in her old age. Vivian walked to the wall of documents, touched my grandmother's photo gently. She tried to change her will. transfer more of the trust to me directly because she didn't trust your parents anymore. That's when she died. The men last night, the ones who took you, who were they? She laughed bitterly. Not FBI, if that's what you're wondering. Private security. Your father hired them to scare me off. They've been following me for years. Every time I get close to exposing what happened, they show up, threaten me, run me out of town. Why didn't you go to the police? I did. Multiple times. But your father has connections, lawyers, friends in the right places. My evidence kept disappearing. Witnesses changed their stories. The one detective who believed me was suddenly transferred to a different city. She turned to face me. In the morning light, I could see how tired she looked, how much this had cost her. I've lost everything trying to prove this. My career, my relationships, years of my life. But I couldn't let it go. Couldn't let them get away with killing my mother. What do you want me to do? Fight back. You have something I never had. You're the beneficiary now. You have legal standing. And you haven't signed anything yet. She walked to her desk and pulled out a folder. I have a lawyer, someone who specializes in trust litigation. She's been waiting years for a case like this. If you're willing to testify, to turn over that contract with your forged signature, we can finally bring them down. I thought about my family. My mom who taught me to ride a bike, my dad who'd helped with my homework, my sister who'd been my best friend growing up. I thought about them gathered around a table last night, trying to trick me into signing away my rights, into taking responsibility for their crime. I thought about my grandmother, how they'd killed her, stolen from her, erased Vivian from existence. What happens if we do this? I asked. Criminal charges probably. Fraud, forgery. If we can prove the poisoning, potentially murder, civil suits, they'll lose everything. You'll likely lose your relationship with them forever. I think I already lost that last night. Vivian smiled sadly. Yeah, that's usually how it goes. I picked up the contract, looked at my forged signature. When can we meet with the lawyer? This afternoon, 2 o'clock. I already told her you might call. We spent the morning going through everything. Vivian explained the trust structure, how trusts work, how my grandmother had set it up to protect the money, make it grow, provide for future generations, how my parents had systematically dismantled those protections. The scary part, Vivian said, is how good they are at this. Your father especially. He knows just enough about law and finance to be dangerous. He's been planning this for probably 20 years, since before you were born. How much is left in the trust? She pulled up a document on her laptop. Based on what I can track, maybe 200,000 out of an original 1.3 million. My jaw dropped. They stole over $1 million? Slowly, carefully, small enough withdrawals that banks didn't flag them, diverse enough investments that auditors didn't question them. Your father's good at what he does, but not good enough. Not good enough to cover his tracks completely, no. He got arrogant, started taking bigger amounts. That's when I noticed the pattern. At 1 o'clock, we left the apartment, took separate cabs to the lawyer's office downtown. Her name was Patricia Okonkwo, tall, sharp. She had an office on the 20th floor with a view of the river. Thank you for coming, she said, shaking my hand. Vivian's told me a lot about you. We sat. I handed her the contract. She read through it slowly, making notes. When she finished, she looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. This is one of the most blatant fraud attempts I've seen in 20 years of practice. They weren't even subtle. What do I do? First, we file an emergency petition to freeze the trust, prevent any more withdrawals. Then we file criminal complaints, multiple agencies, FBI for wire fraud, state police for the forgery, county prosecutors for the rest. How long will this take? Years, probably. Cases like this are complex, but you have something most plaintiffs don't. Clear documentation, a forged signature, a pattern of behavior, and Vivian's 15 years of research. Patricia leaned forward. I need to be honest with you. This will be hard. Your family will fight back. They'll hire expensive lawyers. They'll claim you're mentally unstable, that Vivian manipulated you. They'll drag your name through the mud. What happens to the money? If we win, the trust will be restored, divided according to the original terms, half to Vivian, half to you, plus damages, plus whatever's recoverable from your parents' assets. I looked at Vivian. She nodded. Okay, I said, let's do it. The next 3 weeks were a blur. Patricia moved fast, filed the emergency petition. The judge granted it. The trust was frozen. My parents couldn't access a single dollar. I stayed at Vivian's apartment, didn't go back to my place, changed my phone number, blocked my entire family on social media. The FBI got involved. Turned out there were federal violations, wire fraud, identity theft. The investigation expanded. Agents came to interview me. I told them everything, showed them the contract, the forged signature, explained what happened at the bar. My sister showed up at my work. I was a graphic designer at a small agency. She came right into the office, made a scene. How can you do this to us? She screamed. We're your family! Security escorted her out. I filed for a restraining order. My parents' lawyer called, wanted to settle, offered to return some money if I dropped the criminal charges. Patricia laughed when she told me. They're panicking, she said. Good. The local news picked up the story. Not with names at first, but enough details that people figured it out. Trust fund fraud. Elderly woman poisoned. Daughter erased. Granddaughter almost framed. My inbox filled with messages. Friends from high school, cousins I barely knew, people I'd worked with. Everyone had an opinion. Some thought I was brave, standing up to my family, fighting corruption. Others thought I was ungrateful, tearing apart my family over money, being dramatic. I deleted social media, stopped reading comments, focused on getting through each day. Vivian and I became close. She told me stories about my grandmother, things I'd never known, how she'd grown up poor, worked 3 jobs to put herself through college, met my grandfather at a library, built a life from nothing. She was tough, Vivian said one night. We were eating takeout in her kitchen, but fair. She had rules, principles. Your parents hated that. They wanted money, status. She wanted to teach us about responsibility. What happened? Between her and my parents? Your dad married my sister for the trust fund. I figured that out pretty quick. Mom did too, but by then you were born. She didn't want to lose access to her granddaughter, so she tried to work with them, set boundaries, make them earn their inheritance. They didn't like that. No, they wanted it all, now. And they were willing to do whatever it took. 3 months after my birthday, the criminal charges were filed. 4 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of forgery, 1 count of identity theft. The murder investigation was reopened, based on Vivian's evidence, the autopsy report, the original police reports. My parents' lawyer held a press conference, called it a witch hunt, said I was mentally unstable, that I'd fallen under Vivian's influence. Patricia held one the next day, with me sitting beside her, looking calm, professional. I made a statement, short, simple. My family tried to trick me into signing a fraudulent document. They forged my signature. They've been stealing from a trust for 15 years. I'm seeking justice, not revenge. The trial was set for the following summer, 18 months away. In the meantime, life went on, sort of. I quit my job. The attention was too much. Co-workers staring, whispering, clients asking questions. I started freelancing, working from home. It was easier, quieter. Vivian got a job at a nonprofit, finally stable after years of chasing evidence. We had dinner twice a week, watched terrible TV, slowly built something like a normal relationship. I started therapy, had to process everything, the betrayal, the lies, the realization that my entire childhood had been built on fraud. My therapist asked me once if I regretted it, turning them in. I thought about it for a long time. No, I finally said. I regret that I had to, that they put me in that position, but I don't regret the choice. The preliminary hearing started in spring. I had to testify, face my family across a courtroom. My dad wouldn't look at me. My mom cried. My sister stared at me with pure hatred. Their lawyer tried to paint me as greedy, vindictive, said I'd made this all up for attention, that Vivian had manipulated me. But the evidence was clear. The forged signature, the paper trail, the altered trust documents, Vivian's 15 years of meticulous records. The judge ruled there was enough evidence to proceed to trial. My parents posted bail, moved to a smaller house. Their lawyer bills were bleeding them dry. I didn't feel bad about it. My sister called from a blocked number. I answered before realizing it was her. I hope you're happy, she said. You've destroyed everything. I didn't destroy anything. They did. You could have just signed the paper. We could have worked it out. But you had to be difficult. You always have to make everything about you. They forged my signature. They killed our grandmother. You don't know that. You're believing some bitter woman who couldn't accept being written out. Vivian wasn't written out. She was erased. There's a difference. She hung up. That was the last time we spoke. Summer came. The trial was postponed. Some procedural issue. Pushed to fall, then winter, then spring again. Finally, 2 years after my 25th birthday, the trial began. It lasted 6 weeks. The prosecution laid out the evidence, financial records, forensic analysis of the trust documents, expert testimony about the forged signature, Vivian's research. The defense argued incompetence, not malice, said my parents had made mistakes but never intended fraud, that the trust was confusing, that they genuinely believed they were allowed to take that money. No one believed it. The jury deliberated for 3 days. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, just waited. Guilty on all counts. My parents faced 10 to 15 years. The judge was harsh, said they'd violated a sacred trust, betrayed their own child, destroyed their family for greed. I didn't cry when the verdict was read, just sat there, numb. Vivian squeezed my hand. The civil case was easier. With the criminal conviction, there wasn't much to argue. The judge ruled in our favor, ordered my parents to repay everything they'd stolen, plus damages, plus legal fees. They didn't have it, not anymore. Most of the money was gone, spent on lawyers, cars, houses, my sister's wedding that never happened. The court seized their remaining assets, their house, my dad's car, bank accounts, investment portfolios, my mom's jewelry. It still wasn't enough to repay what they'd taken, but the judge said the trust would be made whole from their future earnings, garnished wages, tax refunds, anything they made for the rest of their lives. My sister wasn't charged. She'd signed the contract, but prosecutors said she didn't benefit directly, wasn't involved in the long-term fraud, just the final attempt. She moved across the country, cut off all contact. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she changed her name. The murder investigation went nowhere. The original evidence was too old, too compromised. The detective who'd worked the case was dead. Witnesses couldn't be found. The prosecutors tried, but without new evidence, they couldn't make it stick. The best they could do was label it suspicious, leave it open. Vivian was disappointed, but not surprised. At least we know the truth, she said. The trust was restored, divided according to the original terms. After legal fees and restitution, there was about $400,000 left. $200,000 each. Not as much as it should have been, but enough. I paid off my student loans, put a down payment on a small condo, invested the rest, tried to be smart about it, honor what my grandmother wanted. Vivian did the same, bought a little house, started a scholarship fund in our grandmother's name for students studying education. 3 years after that birthday, I finally felt like I could breathe. The trial was over. The appeals were done. My parents were in prison. I built a new life. I still thought about them sometimes, wondered if they understood what they'd done, if they felt any remorse, if they ever thought about the family they'd destroyed. Probably not. Vivian said I should let it go. Move on. Some people never change. She was right. I focused on other things. My design work, my condo, dating occasionally, building friendships that weren't based on lies. I met someone eventually, through work. We dated for a year before I told him about my family, about the trial, everything. He listened without judgment, just held my hand. That must have been incredibly hard. Yeah, I said, but I survived it. More than survived. You stood up for yourself. That takes courage. I thought about that a lot afterward. Courage. I'd never thought of it that way. It had felt more like survival, like I didn't have a choice. But maybe that's what courage is. Doing the hard thing, even when it costs you everything. 4 years later, on my 29th birthday, Vivian and I went to my grandmother's grave. We hadn't been there together before. It felt right. We brought flowers, sat in the grass, talked to her like she could hear us. We got them, Mom, Vivian said quietly. They're paying for what they did. I didn't know what to say, so I just sat there, letting the sun warm my face, thinking about everything that had happened, everything that had changed. I wish I'd known you better, I finally said to the headstone. I wish they'd let me. Vivian put her arm around me. She knew you'd be okay. That's why she set up the trust the way she did. She was protecting you from her own daughter. Yeah, sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who hurt us the worst. We stayed until the sun started setting. Then we went to dinner. A nice restaurant, not a bar, no family drama, just two people who'd survived something terrible, who'd fought back, who'd won. It wasn't the birthday celebration I'd imagined when I turned 25, but it was better, real, honest. The last time I saw my parents was at their sentencing. I didn't speak to them, didn't even look at them, just sat in the back of the courtroom and watched justice happen. My sister never reached out. I heard she got married, had a kid, lives in Oregon or Washington, somewhere far away. I don't blame her for cutting ties. She made her choice. I made mine. Sometimes that's how families end. Not with a fight, not with forgiveness, just with distance, space, separate lives. 5 years after that birthday, I'm doing okay. Better than okay. I have a career I love, a partner who supports me, a life that's mine, built on truth instead of lies. Vivian is my family now, her and the friends I've chosen, people who show up, who tell the truth, who don't try to steal from me. The trust is gone now. We split what was left and closed it out. Didn't want the reminder, the connection to that whole mess. Sometimes people ask what happened, why I don't talk to my parents. If I regret how it all went down, I tell them the short version. We had a falling out. Over money. It's complicated. Most people don't push. They sense there's more to the story, something heavy, something I don't want to unpack at parties. The ones who do push, who keep asking questions, I usually just shut down, change the subject. It's not something I want to relive over and over, but sometimes with people I trust, I tell the whole story, everything, from that birthday drink to the trial to the aftermath, and every time, they ask the same question. How did you do it? How did you stand up to your whole family? I don't have a good answer. It wasn't brave, it wasn't heroic, it was just necessary. They'd backed me into a corner, given me two choices, sign their fraudulent document, and become complicit in their crime, or fight back and lose my family. Some choices aren't really choices at all. I think about that birthday a lot, how different everything could have been. If the stranger hadn't warned me, if I just signed the paper, if I trusted my family instead of my gut, I'd probably be in prison right now, taking the fall for their fraud, while they lived off my inheritance. Or maybe I'd have figured it out eventually. Maybe the truth would have come out anyway. I don't know. What I do know is that family isn't just blood, it's trust. Honesty, showing up for each other without ulterior motives. My parents taught me that lesson, just not the way they intended. Vivian taught me too, showed me what real family looks like, how it feels to have someone on your side, someone who fights for you instead of using you. Last year, I started using my grandmother's maiden name, legally changed it, dropped my parents' name entirely. It felt like the final step, the last piece of separating myself from them, from what they did. I'm building something new now, something clean, a life my grandmother would be proud of. I think about her often, wonder what she'd say if she could see me now, if she'd think I did the right thing, if she'd be proud or disappointed. Vivian says she'd be proud, that standing up for yourself is always the right choice. That family should protect you, not exploit you. I hope she's right. On my 30th birthday, I didn't go out for drinks, didn't celebrate with family, just had dinner with Vivian and my partner. Quiet, simple, nice. No strangers with warnings, no forged documents, no drama, just a normal birthday, with people I trust, people who love me, and that felt like enough, more than enough. It felt like winning.